Hey, hope you're well. This is the Wolfcraft Master 1600 bench. I took a look at this a few weeks back and found it wanting in a few areas. Since then, of course, we've got the Metabo MWB100, which on paper at least should wipe the floor with the Wolfcraft. Let's get it out of the box and see how it stands up. The bench comes very well packaged with plenty of corner protection and the accessories in a separate box. There's a chunky grab handle set into the underside of the bench and a slim plastic strap handle on the rear face of the extrusion. This folds flat and sits between the T-track at the top and the lip at the bottom of what looks like a custom extrusion, certainly not one that I've seen before, and I'm happy to confirm that the bench will stand on one edge. There's a sprung pin that releases the legs, and the legs have no locking mechanism at all other than the steel brackets that fold out from the framework and clip over little studs. There's also a sliding plastic clip that should help to prevent accidental release. Each leg is independently height adjustable with little sprung pins, and the 6 positions on each leg, one every 37 millimeters or so. The 6 positions give height adjustment on the bench from 820 millimeters, about 32 inches just over at the lower, to a little over a meter, 40 inches or so at the top end. There's also 1 foot that has screw adjustment on it to take out any wobble on an uneven floor. The bench comes with a nice pair of one-handed squeeze clamps that store under the bench. A little bit fiddly to release from the clips, but you don't want them falling out. And there's an accessory box that includes 4 squarish bench dog type inserts and a couple of triangular clips, more on those later. The clamps appear to be good quality, and the bars are small enough to fit through the slots and dog holes in the bench top, provided you remove the head first, and regular guardrail clamps fit through just fine. The dog holes are chamfered too on the top edge, which definitely helps. The bench top has a grid of holes on 96mm centers, plus a few extra ones along one edge to give cutting angles of 90 and 45 degrees, as well as 30, 15 and 22.5 tweener angles. There's also a shallow recess at either end of the top, which you could use to hold small parts, screws and fixings, or bench dogs, for example. The bench feels heavier than the 22.1 kilos that the box claims. When the manufacturers are quoting tenths of a kilo at you on the box, you know they're trying to make a point. But I have checked it, and it is correct, and it's comfortably enough to lug around, with the central grab handle certainly helping. Well, so far so good. Let's consider the likely competition for a bench like this. With a list price of a couple of £100, including VAT, it is very well priced, with little else coming close to it in terms of price and features. Probably the closest being the Wolfcraft that I looked at not so long back. In all honesty, I can't really imagine why you would choose to purchase the Wolfcraft over the Metabo. I'd say the Wolfcraft is actually better made, better finished anyway, which was a surprise, but it costs more now, and it would need a lot more work to get it working acceptably. And what about going cheaper? Well, there's an £80 bench, slightly smaller than the Metabo, doing the rounds at the moment under several different names. Vivor, Holtzman is one I've seen. I've bought an XL branded version, and I'll be taking a quick look at that very soon as well. Other than that, your choices are to spend more, the UJK top on trestles from Axminster that I talked about before, at around £350, or the Bench Dogs Ultra MFT Basic, of course, is also one to watch out for. Or you could build your own and get something that really suits your specific needs, whether that's ultra lightweight or a longer, narrower bench like I did for working in houses where space is at a premium. Let's get into what I like about the Metabo. Obviously, the price is excellent for a decent quality, solid, brand name bench. It's a little bit smaller than the standard MFT at 710 millimeters deep by 960 wide, but with the legs at the lowest position, lower than the standard MFT or the Wolfcraft bench, I found it extremely comfortable for me and very close to the height of my benches here in the workshop. I like that there's T-track all around the top of the extrusion that's large enough to take a standard guide rail clamp, and the bottom lip of the extrusion is the same depth as this, so it's easy to clamp a board on there to work on the edge. I like that you can fit the 10-minute workshop DIY rail hinge to the extrusion, or the dashboard rail hinge if you're feeling spendy. And I like the fact that the extrusion is flat on the inside as well. So even if you're not using rail clamps, you can still clamp on the face of the bench for working on the edge of a board. Just watch out for the brackets and the fixings on the inside here that are holding the top in place. I like the little indents in the top to stop small parts rolling away, even if you do lose a hole at either end. And I like that the grid of holes in the top is on standard MFT alike 96mm centers. I also like these little plastic triangles that let you easily connect two of these benches together and maintain that 96mm centers across both bench tops. But now I'm afraid we get into the dislikes, because despite the clear care and attention to detail that the bench has had, these holes are not the standard 20mm dog holes. They're slightly smaller. In fact, they're so small that the supplied plastic bench dog accessories are extremely tight. You can get them in, but it's definitely a two-handed job to get them out again. And as for other bench dogs, these are from Trend, from Bench Dogs Co.uk, from UJK, and some that I'm having made for my MFT jig. None of these actually fit at all. Even the quad style dogs that are slightly smaller and rely on a compressed rubber O-ring to lock in, even they won't fit in beyond the O-ring. Honestly, it's hard to know if this is incompetence or arrogance. It is a standalone bench. You pay more money for the Festool or for the dashboard PWS or the Bench Dogs Ultra, and for that you get a bench that's part of a system. But there's no Metabo fence or rail hinge that you can add to this. A strange omission, to be honest, considering that Metabo make a pretty well regarded cordless plunge saw. So if those are things that you want to do with the bench, and they're called a multifunction table for a reason, then you are relying on third-party solutions for that. And yet Metabo have made it difficult by making the holes in the top non-standard. I mentioned the 10-minute workshop rail hinge and the dashboard hinge as well. I imagine that the Bench Dogs hinge can also be made to fit, but because it's based on quad dogs, you can't even use the template to bore the extra couple of holes that you'd need closer to the edge, because you can't get the template located as these holes are too small. On the bright side though, the holes are too small, so they're easy enough to open up. Both Bench Dogs Co.uk and UJK make a reamer for about £20 that will do the job, or you might decide to put that money into a new top or maybe into an MFT jig if you want to make your own. But honestly, all this messing around could have been avoided if Metabo had stuck to the standard dog hole sizes that we've had for close to 40 years. And while I'm having a bit of a whinge and a moan, let me just say I'm a little underwhelmed by the quality control. Yes, it's only a £200 bench, but that's still 200 quid. This is the second one of these that I've had, as the first one had a leg that wouldn't lock. The little sprung pin didn't locate in the hole, making it completely unusable. And I just want to say a very quick thank you to Alan Harrison at ProTrade, who I bought this from, for getting this, his one remaining Metabo bench, this one, over to me very promptly so I could get this video out this week. The other little niggle that I have is with the T-slot, not in the extrusion itself, but in the plastic corner sections. 3 of them are absolutely fine, but one is misaligned or misshaped, and it's really hard to get a clamp in there. As soon as it clears the plastic piece, it's absolutely fine, but it takes far too much effort to get the clamp in. And this isn't a one-off either. Many of my 10-minute workshop plus members have bought these benches, some more than one, and a number of them have reported this problem. As for things that I'm on the fence about, it's nitpicking, but these extra holes in the bench top for doing angled cuts, in 20 years or so as a cabinet maker, a fitted furniture guy, I'm pretty sure I've never needed to make a 15-degree cut on a flat board like that, or any of these other angles, to be perfectly honest. It's common enough to need those angles on a bevel cut on the edge of a board, but rarely on the flat. I think the only time I've done them would be for angled doors or the backs of a cabinet in understairs cabinetry or attic wardrobes, and they are almost always weird custom angles, very specific to very specific situations. So while it probably does no harm to have them here, I can't really ever imagine needing them. It's a little unclear at this stage as well whether you'll be able to get a replacement top as an OEM spare part, or whether you'll have to rely on third parties for that, like you do for the fence and the rail hinge. So who is this bench for? Well, it's for anybody who's sort of moved beyond the it's just a pasting table with holes in it kind of mentality and sees the benefit of a solid portable solution for clamping and precise cutting, whether that's someone in the trade who needs a cost-effective solution for installs, or a weekend woodworker who wants to up their game from a workmate or an MFT top on trestles, but doesn't want to commit to the full OEM MFT experience. For me personally, I really wanted this to be the well-priced bench that you could buy and build yourself a system around, and it's almost there. It's just not quite. And once again, it seems to come down to some frankly odd decision making along the way. And maybe you're sat there thinking, well, this is just me nitpicking and looking for faults. But here's the thing. What it means is that instead of me standing here thinking that you could buy 2 of these and have change from the price of a Festool MFT Basic and have a much more flexible system, instead, I'm thinking that, well, given the niggles with this, how much worse could those cheap little XL or Vivo benches be? Because I can get 2 of these for the price of 1 of these. And that's probably not what Metabo had in mind when they pulled the trigger on these. It's a great bench for the money. Just be aware of what you're getting into. A bit of a bench dog's breakfast, if you like. I'll get into the XL bench in a little while. As always, there'll be previews for 10 Minute Workshop Plus members before anything's made public. And while I really don't want to turn this into a 10-minute MFT workshop, off the top of my head, I can think of a few quick and easy improvements that I can make to the Metabo. If you've got one of these already, let me know in the comments how you're getting along with it. But I think I'll call this one done for this week. Thanks so much for taking a look. As always, leave a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.